Summer. It's the time of fun, relaxation, and staying inside all day because it's raining all the time and COVID restrictions are still in place. Well, at least that means I'll have plenty of time to catch up on stuff this summer. You should know the drill by now. These are my favorite things in manga, anime, and video games from these last months. Let's get started. For a while now, I've been wanting to get more into the independent manga scene, as I think there is so much great stuff here to be discovered. It seems to often present a more grounded and subdued side of manga, which is something that has always appealed to me. Enter Children of Mutown, a single-volume manga by Jushichi Masumura that recently got an English translation, courtesy of Glacier Bay Books, telling the story of a district near Tokyo, often referred to as Murraytown. Due to its proximity to the capital, the town has become a place of interest for political groups and influential parties, to the distress of the mostly elderly population. In the story, we follow a young man named Juichi, who's the son of a yakuza tasked with taking care of the town's affairs. And it's in Juichi's relationship with the town, as well as with his good friend Hajime, that we find the story's major source of conflict, as both can be seen as things that often get in the way of Juichi's job, but at the same time, they are the things that keep him in balance and help him see the purpose in his day-to-day life. The conflicts raging inside him are almost beautiful in both their mundanity and complexity, with the constant battle between duty, affection, and his desire for release and freedom from it all. The art style of this manga will probably be somewhat off-putting for many, with its rough, sometimes sketch-like style, but at the same time it never gets in the way of comprehension, and also fits really well the overall setting and themes. With it always hovering the line between dreamlike and realistic, it gives off much the same vibes as something like a Taiyo Matsumoto manga, which is absolutely a good thing. In the end, I came out of this incredibly impressed. I always love it when an author manages to tell such a compelling and compact story in just a single volume. The great love Masumura has for the medium is on full display here, and if any of this sounded interesting to you, then I highly encourage you to check this one out. As we're on the topic of shorter manga, this time I want to talk about something that was released only about a month ago, namely Look Back, a one-shot manga by the creator of Chainsaw Man and Fire Punch, Tatsuki Fujimoto. It's kind of hard to sell these kinds of shorter manga without giving too much away from the get-go. I will say that going into this completely cold is probably the best way to go about it, and it's absolutely worth the small time investment it is to read through it. Even so, here is my short sales pitch. Look Back tells the story of a young girl named Fujino following her dreams of becoming a manga artist, as well as her growing friendship with her classmate and partner Kyomoto, a former shut-in who's been pulled out of a room by her love for Fujino stories. I don't think it's a stretch to say that Look Back is likely based on Fujimoto's own journey as an artist. I hardly think it's a coincidence that both of the main characters' names incorporate kanji used in Fujimoto's own. And what we get is a beautifully told story about friendship, ambition, and finding meaning in one's own creations. You seriously don't want to skip this one. And now for something a little more upbeat, we have Kaiju No. 8 by Naoya Matsumoto. A lot of you are probably already familiar with this one, as it has really taken the world by storm since it started serialization in Jump Plus about a year ago. And after hearing people singing its praises all this time, I decided to finally catch up with it. This one takes place in modern-day Japan, which has in the last decade been under constant attacks from monsters seemingly emerging out of nowhere. To defend humanity against these attacks, Japan founded the Defense Force, which is composed of exceptional individuals tasked with killing the kaiju whenever they emerge. I've seen people draw comparisons to Attack on Titan, but they're really quite different. You see, in this one, the main character can actually turn into a kaiju. Jokes aside though, these comparisons are really only surface level, as Kaiju No. 8 opts for a more light-hearted and fun take on humanity's fight for survival. Our protagonist, Kafka Hibino, despite being in his 30s, radiates so much shonen protagonist energy that it's ridiculous. As a young boy, he made a promise with his childhood friend Mina that they would both join the Defense Force and wipe out the kaiju together. But instead, he fails the admission tests and ends up wasting a decade of his life cleaning up kaiju corpses while watching Mina rise through the ranks by herself. Even so, motivated by one of his young co-workers, he decides to try out again, and despite performing worse than his competition in pretty much every way, he keeps on with his stupidly optimistic outlook and silly demeanor, which makes it hard not to root for the guy. Unlike the other series that I've mentioned, there really isn't much more to this one other than it just being a really fun, action-packed shonen series. This is the kind of read where you can just turn your brain off for a while and still have a great time. Okay, I'll keep this next one short, as I haven't actually finished it yet, but a few months ago, the fan translation group, the Geofront, released their translation of Trails to Azure, which closes out the Crossbell arc of the Trail series of JRPG games. I talked about it in one of my first videos on this channel, but I absolutely love these games. They show off such a great balance of epic adventure and personal stories with a fantastically realized world filled with history, politics, culture and relations that is a joy to experience. If you want to get into these games, I'd recommend starting with the first game, Trails in the Sky, which does have an English release on Steam, though you could probably start with any of the 3 major arcs currently out. As I said, this is mostly meant to be a shout out to the great job the Geofront team did on this project. Just like with its predecessor, Trails from Zero, they have not only done a complete translation from the ground up, but also added some great quality of life features to it. And also, since this is a patch that you apply to the untranslated version of the game, you still get to support the original creators by playing this version. Many people hold this as one of their favorite games in the series, and I'm so happy that I can finally get to play it. Alright, let's talk about some anime, and we'll start off with this season's great underdog, Odd Taxi. This weird little gem of a series is an anime original that tells a type of story that we don't often see in anime, namely a subdued urban crime thriller, which is interesting as this is a very popular genre within modern Japanese literature, but it's not often we see an anime studio take a crack at it, and especially not with an execution as good as we see on display here. The events of the story kick off with the disappearance of a young girl in high school who seems to have some kind of connection to the city's criminal underworld. And what follows is a series of interconnected stories of people from all different walks of life who get tangled up in this compelling mystery. And somehow, at the center of all this craziness is a single stoic taxi driver who's supposed to have been one of the last people to see the girl before her disappearance. What ends up making Odd Taxi so compelling is ultimately its writing, as it not only stands out with its great mystery progression, but also with its character writing and its fun, rapid-fire dialogue made to almost resemble a two-man comedy act, for which the series scriptwriter obviously has a lot of love. And with an ending that wraps it all up in a super satisfying way, there is no reason not to check this one out. This season had an amazing lineup of anime originals, which is good as it almost lets me forget what happened to Wonder Egg Priority. And while I haven't been able to catch up on Megalobox just yet, though I certainly will, There is another show that I really want to spotlight as my last pick for this video, and that is Studio Wit's Vivi, Fluorite's Eye Song. From everything I'd heard about Odd Taxi before getting into it, I was fairly certain that I was gonna like it from the start, but I honestly did not expect to end up loving Vivi as much as I did. It tells the tale of the first fully autonomous android to be made, a songstress named Diva, also known as Vivi, working in an amusement park. After meeting an AI named Matsumoto that has been sent from the future to warn against the coming war between humanity and AI, she decides to help out with the 100-year-long mission to prevent the catastrophe. We are then treated to a series of short stories revolving around the rapid evolution of artificial intelligence throughout the coming century, all while Vivi ponders over her own given mission to make everyone happy through her singing. It's kinda like Isaac Asimov's I, Robot, but with added ass-kicking idol waifus. And that's not to make light of the ass-kicking idol waifus part, because holy shit, just look at this! In addition to the amazing action sequences, we have some genuinely tender and heartfelt moments between both the androids and the humans who all have to deal with the new, ever-changing world. The concept of androids figuring out what it means to be human is far from a novel one, and this series really doesn't do anything to innovate much on the discussion, but what it does do is give us some great stories about people simply trying to find a place in the world, and about how life has a tendency to run you by, even when it seems like you have all the time in the world. And with how well it manages to do this, it really doesn't need anything else. Well, that's another 2 months gone by. I don't really have much to add here, other than the fact that we just hit 3,000 subscribers the other day. Thank you so much to all of you for your support. I have a lot of video ideas that I can't wait to make for you in the future. So yeah, I hope you'll stick around. As always, thank you so much for watching. This has been Avantgarde, and I'll see you next time.